My name is Hunt Batjer. I'm the chair of neurological surgery at UT Southwestern. You're listening to an interview with the surgeon and the surgeon agent.
On this episode of Interview with the Surgeon, we welcome Dr. Hunt Batjer, Chair of Neurosurgery at UT Southwestern. He is recognized internationally as a leading cerebral vascular surgeon and is the 2020 recipient of the Harvey Cushing Medal, the highest honor bestowed by the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. Dr. Batjer has had numerous roles in organized medicine. He is past president of the Congress of Neurological Surgeons, the Society of University Surgeons, and the Neurosurgical Society of America, the Society of Neurological Surgeons, and the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. He is past chairman of the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, Congress of Neurological Surgeons, section on cerebral vascular disease. He is a past director and past chair of the American Board of Neurological Surgery. He is past chair of the ACGME Neurosurgical Residency Review Committee and co-chair of the NFL Committee on Head, Neck, and Spine Injuries. His academic pursuits and research have resulted in over 440 peer-reviewed publications and books and 19 books and chapters. He has presented 47 endowed lectureships and served as visiting professor in 61 medical institutions nationwide.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Interview with the Surgeon. Today, we welcome Dr. Hunt Batjer, Chair of Neurosurgery at UT Southwestern. Doc, how are we doing today?
Very well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you for being with us. And also, congratulations on being the recipient of the 2020 Harvey Cushing Medal.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor in my specialty. It's a great honor.
Absolutely. So let's get this started. What were your goals and aspirations during your residency, and how did those change throughout your fellowship?
I did not necessarily grow up with a formed idea about what I wanted to do. I knew I loved the sciences and I loved mathematics, and mainly I wanted to pitch for the New York Yankees. And I was drafted in high school by the Orioles, and I really wanted to play for the Yankees. And the Orioles had 5 great starting pitchers at the time, and my dad convinced me to go to the University of Texas, and I ended up hurting my rotator cuff during my first year. And I had formed some ideas about math, science, and how they might relate to a downfield career, and medicine was very attractive, and I put myself in pre-med even at the time I registered at the University of Texas. So I knew I'd seen a beautiful picture of Da Vinci when I was in high school. That was a pencil drawing showing facial features. You could see the scalp, the skin, but you could also see the brain through interesting techniques from that time. And he had a geometric caliper placed on the scalp in the drawing that had a focal point down to a point inside the brain. And I was fascinated by that and thought, God, if I can't pitch for the Yankees, maybe I'll be a brain surgeon. So I wound myself up into that sort of trajectory, but I liked every field of medicine that I studied in school. And I ended up being very attracted by a charismatic vascular surgeon who happened to be the chair of surgery at UT Southwestern at that time. That's where I trained, where I went to school and where I trained. But I did request a rotation in neurosurgery early in my internship. After that month and during that month, it crystallized my ideas that I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So I didn't know a great deal about it. And the stereotactic idea that had formed early in my life, looking at a Da Vinci drawing, is not where I went. And I watched early on. I watched Dr. Duke Sampson, who just returned from the military at that time in the 1970s, who was a cerebrovascular surgeon. And I was immediately attracted to that area and loved it. And I knew I was just watching Duke operate and with some of the chief residents that were around, and I just knew I could do that and do it better. I didn't say that, but I knew that. It just fit my personality and technically the fascinating anatomy, the beauty of microsurgery, the delicacy of the tissue was uh, very athletic, quite honestly, in its context as it played out. And decision making was very athletic. We have a problem. Let's develop a strategy quick. I need it right now. I'm going to trial it real quick. I'm going to commit and I'm going to act. And these things have to happen in that field very quickly in a matter of very, very few seconds. So a very elegant, delicate procedure becomes a salvage life or death matter very, very quickly. And that part, as an old pitcher, was really right up my alley. So it was very attractive to me. So I knew I loved that. And we had a year away during our residency training. And for that time, I picked a rotation with Dr. Charles Drake, and I applied to him. He was at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, and was one of the two leading world figures in vascular neurosurgery of the 20th century, and a majestic man, and I mean that in every sense of the word. A humble, wonderful, caring man who was also a natural surgeon. And I remember during my time there, I watched and I interrupted him and I said, Dr. Drake, what did you just do? What was that last move that unfolded the anatomy like I just saw it? It was a giant aneurysm of some type. And his answer was not what I wanted or what I expected. He said, oh, I can smell an aneurysm. I said, okay, I got that. But what was that? That one maneuver, transitions of surgery. Anybody who's going to be a surgeon has to understand transitions of the procedure. That's the magic. That's what turns unsafe to safe, slow and methodical to rapid. If you understand the transitions, it can make them happen and use the non-dominant hand and a bunch of other nuances, much of which I learned from Dr. Drake. So I knew that. I knew I loved that. And I would say to myself on rounds, dear God, just help me be 5% of what that guy is. That would be a grand slam home run in anybody's ballpark. And so then I come back to the real world, finish my chief residency, and I'd interviewed for several jobs, and they were largely private jobs. And I was struck by a nuance that I think your audience might be interested in. In the private clinics that I went to interview in and was offered a boffo amount of money, not for a baseball agent, but a lot of money for a humble doctor. When I looked at the bookshelves, I would notice things very different than the bookshelves at the universities. I got the impression that the profession was used as a means to the avocations and leisure parts of life. And not that that's bad. It was just an observation that was in a way starkly obvious. Whereas the academicians that had been around, including Dr. Drake, their world was what they did. And their other world was to recharge their batteries to do their world better. So I know that's subtle, and I know that's maybe a myopic view of the universe, but that is what my experience was, and I was attracted to it. And then one day, as a chief resident, Dr. Sampson and I did a complicated vascular case and went to the lounge to get our lab coats on to go see the family. And we stopped, to be quite honest, at the urinal. And he sort of in a gruff voice said, "Well, I like the way you do vascular disease. I'm tired of this shit. Why don't you come join me? You can do all you want." And said, "Well, that sounds good. That sounds good. Won't have to move. Get to do what I love doing. We don't have to shake on it right now, do we?" And he got a laugh out of that. So I joined him, and that was really the only other jobs I had looked at were private at that time. And my father, when I called him and told him what I'd done, he told me what an idiot I was, and for turning down much more money, but it was a defining moment that set the stage for.
So now thinking back, what would you say were some of the keys to your success that shaped your early career that allowed you to climb the ranks of the academic world?
Certainly, my advice to the surgeons just starting their careers, their careers in practice, and the demarcation, I should mention, that between academics and privatemics and private are quite gray now. They were black and white when I was young. So that has to be kept in mind. But as they start their practice, I think the first thing to establish is don't get competent, get excellent, get mastery, go for mastery. I've been testifying before Congress and asked how many of the congressional people said, how many of you would like a competent neurosurgeon waltzing around in their circle of Willis? And I didn't get much of a response. How many would like a surgical master? And they all raised their hands. Strive for mastery. You can do it in your sleep. You can do it better awake, but you can do it always. And you can get out of trouble no matter what Mother Nature or the evil spirits throw at you. You can get out of it. And with a good patient. So first of all, surgical mastery. Be the best. Be the best you can be. We're all given a certain deck of biological talents. Use all of it. And because your patients need all of it. That's number one. Number two, connectivity. I was blessed early on, and exactly the year this formed, I can't recall exactly. It was the late 1980s, I believe. I got a call from some colleagues and a group of young neurosurgeons were forming a travel club that later became named Equanimitas. And that name was chosen very deliberately. These were people that were all young. They were mostly, but not exclusively, academic. And they all shared a love of the outdoors, of sports, of outdoor activities, and all had young families. And we developed that group, which was around 12 originally. It's now 13. And of that group of young neurosurgeons who are no longer young, we've had at least 11 that are sitting or former chairs of neurological surgery at universities around the country. We've had presidents of all of our societies, chairs of the American Board, chairs of the RSC, you name it, they've done everything. So this group became connectivity to me. I was in a very insular program that didn't reach out much. was very inwardly focused. It was very good, but it wasn't connected. And they gave me my connection. I'd call up somebody and say, hey, Dan, what do you think about this case? Here's what I'm thinking. Just as a way to bounce ideas off. At meetings, we would have a quote scientific meeting in the morning, followed by sports, golf, tennis, fishing, hiking, whatever in the afternoon. Kids there, all of our children grew up together, and we do evening dinners and sit by the fire or on the beach or wherever, and had them all grew up together. But at our meetings, I think it gets to your question. We would bring up not things that you would present at a national podium. We would bring up ideas. I've been thinking about this. Let me get some reactions from you. And you're in a group of incredibly bright and / brilliant people, incredibly experienced, who are also your brothers. And we shared ideas, we refined ideas, we came away with projects, plans. Sometimes we collaborated within our institutions across the country to answer a question that had been brought up at Travel Club. And those relationships endure to this day. We still meet once at each of our 2 national meetings, and we have a summer event where all of our families go as well. So it's been a very, very rich set of relationships that are now 30 years old. But that, in a way, helped me refine my academics because they became my connectome. Many of those people would nominate me for positions and vice versa. And we became really the leadership node, NODE, of the specialty, housing all the positions that you're aware of. And I really think it was first, focus on surgical mastery. Second, allow your academic pursuits to follow your core values, your heart. What is it that's important to me? What are the great challenges of the time? What can we answer, and how do we do it?
Thank you for sharing that insight with us. Can you kind of briefly talk about your journey on how you ended back at UT Southwestern as the chair of the program?
Would go back to when I left Southwestern. That was in 1995. I shared much with Duke Sampson. We had a love for neurosurgery. We had a love for cerebrovascular disease in general. We had a love for technical neurosurgery and teaching it right and reporting it right. But our view of what an academic program should encompass was very, very different. And I had looked at a number of chairs, and Northwestern was recruiting me, and they had an environment that was incredibly attractive. It was one in a great city, Chicago. It was in a great part of Chicago. It had a mature health system. When I needed a cardiologist for a patient that needed to be cleared for morning surgery, the answer I got was not, well, I'd love to help, but my grant's due next week. It was, be right there, doc. And that was a fantastic environment. And we built a program from nothing to a top 10 U.S. News program over some years. And it was hard work and wonderful work, fun. And Chicago, as you know, is a little more, it's not New York. It's not harsh in that way. It's just a little sober. It's a little serious. And me and the my recruits, we just decided, you know what, it is a little serious in the elevators, but we're going to spend a hell of a lot more time with each other than we are with our families. Let's have a good time. Let's do a great job and make these the best days of our life, which we did. I never planned to leave, and I got a call from the dean at UT Southwestern, and he said, the president and I are committed to making UT Southwestern a world-class academic health center. And I said, wait a second, did you say you're the dean at UT Southwestern? And it was obviously somebody I did not know yet. And he said, yes. I said, well, that's a goal I've had at UT Southwestern since I was a kid in medical school, because it was missing a big piece. It was missing the big clinical piece. We had it in neurosurgery, but we didn't have it as a system. And that was my initial attraction. And then the idea of picking up the reins for Duke Sampson as he retired or became less active, knowing that he'd had to kick a lot of tires to build a program against the wind over the years. And I wanted him to have someone there that would have his back. That was another advantage of it, and to continue the tradition of developing first-rate technical neurosurgeons with the addition of the other dimension that I had developed, and that was collaborative research with other neuroscience programs, engineering, and then an opportunity to continue and advance my new career in sports medicine and sports policy, which is a whole different story. But I had a lot of relationships, and Charlotte Jones-Anderson had been working with me at the NFL. She was head of NFL charities for a number of years, and she's an incredibly talented and brilliant person who I love to this day being with and working with. I think she's fantastic.
So now, as the chair of the program, what type of advice do you have for the graduating residents and fellows entering the professional job market for the first time?
I think the first set of decisions have to be predicated on them answering one question for me, and that is, what do you want to do with your life? If they can give me a coherent answer, I can have a good discussion with them about options that I think make sense for them. I must say that at that point in my life, before my event in the men's room with Dr. Sampson, I really didn't have a very tightly coherent plan for myself. So I'm trying to push them to get to that point. And it starts earlier in their training than that, of course. But then I try to, the ones that have academic interest are easier for me to advise. The ones who want to go into private practice, I talk to them about non-competes. I talk to them about disability programs what's involved. Since most marriages fail, including neurosurgical marriages, what are my out possibilities? Am I going to be restricted? Are there financial penalties? Will I be playing a role in contracts? Who's doing the contracts for the practice? What's the compensation methodology? What's the incentive plan? And one of the things that I worry a lot about, and I've had discussions for decades with deans and so on, that of the danger in surgical medicine of the work RVU fetish. And I use that word deliberately, Um, work reviews they're really easy because they're just a computer will tell you the number every day. It tells you the number. Um, so that makes it easy. Any moron can figure out a compensation methodology based on that and look at national norms and send out a check. The problem in surgical fields is it has perverse incentives. To start, I'll say some of the incentives for, say, a radiologist, a primary care doctor, for example. Volume is volume, and keeping people focused on getting the work done is a good thing. Obviously, you want good quality work, but once you get that established, then volume is healthy for a system. It's healthy for practice. In surgery, it's different. For example, I'll just take the universe of patients that you see as a surgeon. You've got a group of them that need surgery. Surgery 301, they have a surgical condition and they need a surgical recommendation. You have a group of people on the other end of the spectrum that, for example, if they've got spine disease, they probably need to lose 20 pounds. And that's probably it. They need to exercise more. They need to quit smoking so damn much. It's not too complicated to give them a recommendation. And then there's a group in the middle that are the problem. You could make a sound argument supported with literature and data and so forth to recommend surgery. Or you could make a similar argument that comes out on the side of continued surveillance. The physician compensation is quite different between those two outcomes. And that is a perverse incentive. Also, it disincents internal referrals unless somebody that knows what they're doing has set up the compensation plan, like say a law firm, where the partner that brings the case in maintains some financial connection to that case as it plays through under a junior partner leadership. In surgery, that's quite variable as it's deployed around the country. But do you really want somebody to take on a case? High risk, high complexity. They've got a book. They can read the book the night before. When two doors down from them is a leading national expert in that problem. Is that what you want as a chairman? Is that what you want as a partner in a group? The answer to that is hell no, it's not. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to the human being that's on the other end of it. It's dangerous to the system. How do you incent better behavior than that? I want to introduce you to one of my fine friends and partners who happens to be the leading expert in this part of the country or this country in the problem you have. And he or she will do a fabulous job for you. That can't be penalized financially, or you have a problem. So those are things I would look at in the system or practice I was looking at.
What advice do you have for the graduating class regarding their networking and outreaching process, given that this year there are no annual conferences to meet folks like yourself at?
We have probably a 2-year window of people that are disadvantaged in the way you've just described. They're not going to national meetings because there aren't any. You can see some things over Zoom and other technologies that are better than nothing, but not by a lot. This plays out not only into learning and identifying people that you want to have a conversation with. That might be a conversation about employment. That might be a conversation about a technology or a technique. But that's the start of a relationship. That's how it works. And it's not working that way right now. I think at the ACGME, we're looking very carefully at this 2-year group of people across the specialties in terms of outcomes. Is their outcome going to be damaged by that? Surgeons, they've got case log problems because during shutdowns. We're still having shutdowns, for God's sakes. And this is now November 2020. In the upper Midwest, we're having shutdowns. And that's going to affect their, we've been very flexible at the ACGME about saying even if they haven't met the case logs requirements, if the program director and or chair states in a letter to their board that they are ready for independent practice, then the ACGME considers them, for the time being, capable of independent practice. And that's not a problem to the program that's being evaluated. That won't last forever, obviously, but neither will COVID. So I think the challenge, and that's where mentorship comes in. They're training under a chairperson that knows a lot more people in the country, in the field, and can connect them with those people that are interested in the same areas of neuroscience that they are, for example, or other specialties. And I think that's the best advice at this time. Get to know your own faculty well. Get with those that are doing the things that are important to you. Get the mentorship you need from them and the connectivity from them with their colleagues across the country, and do your best.
I was reading the press release from your award for the 2020 Harvey Cushing Medal, and you were quoted saying that we have a fundamental responsibility to prepare this next generation of physicians for the future that they will face. I was just curious as to how you could relate that to the transitional period that all young surgeons go through from resident to attending.
I think, what are our responsibilities? What is our social contract? When you receive an MD degree, in addition to the Hippocratic Oath, you take on a social contract. Why is it? I would ask all of my young colleagues to reflect on the difference between, for example, the way our politicians are treated by their colleagues, by their peers, by the press, by others, compared to how their colleagues in medicine and surgery are treated. They're very different. Why is that? Well, that is a social contract, and that's what you take when you receive that diploma. You look at it and you read it, and you take the Hippocratic Oath, and you walk down the hall and somebody says, "Doctor, come quick." And you look behind you and you discover that nurse is talking to you. That's a shocking moment, and in all of our careers. And it involves a social contract. It doesn't matter whether you're tired, or it doesn't matter if you've got some family problems. It doesn't matter to that patient. That patient has a life-threatening or life-altering crisis. That patient is the priority, and he or she will be our number one priority until that is taken care of. And we will be there for the public. The public, they come to see us as physicians. They don't know us. They've Googled us, likely, or they've heard something about us, but they know that as physicians, we will be there for them when they need us. It doesn't matter what the problem is, nor does it matter whether they can pay for it. It doesn't matter. We're there for them. That's the social contract. And I think once, and you know, I used in one of my presidential addresses for the AANS, patients in need trump self and family every time. And that's a simple thing to say, but it involves missing some holidays. Not everyone. Missing some children's ball games. Not everyone. Children's concerts. But it is the mantle of what you take on when you accept a position as a physician and surgeon. And it's certainly totally appropriate to be contacted with a big problem and in a situation of exhaustion or expertise differential between you and another doctor, to hand off that patient's care to someone that you know will do exactly the right thing for that patient and inform the patient of that. That's totally fine, but it is your responsibility to do that.
Can you talk about your involvement? Now, you've been either a co-chair or a president of all the major neurosurgery societies, as well as involved with the NFL. Throughout those experiences, what were some memorable moments for you, and how are you able to advance the industry and the society by your leadership?
I think back over several moments. I had been, this was in the early parts of the current century. I had been president of a large national organization and chair of our joint section in cerebrovascular surgery, which was a lot of fun. I was nominated for and put on the American Board of Neurological Surgery. That's our body that certifies, it sets educational standards for training, and it certifies physicians, and it also, at the follow-up, adjudicates physicians with problems or who get in trouble in a variety of ways. It's a hard job, very hard job. It is behind the scenes. There's a small number of people doing extraordinary amount of work for our field. It does our oral examinations, it does our written examinations, it does all those accreditation, not accreditation, but it does those adjudication issues amongst physicians and health systems. And it dawned on me one day after I'd been on the board for 6 months or so, and I said, God, this is really important work, and it's hard work. If you represent an academy, our boards are academies, the ACGME is an academy. We have various organizations that are research and or education focused that function as academies. An organization like an academy focused on research, on technology, on access to care for patients, on healthcare disparities, they have credibility. And the organizations that do that, like our boards, and I was referring to my own experience on the board when I realized that I no longer represented neurosurgeons. I represented Mrs. Jones, who is coming to the emergency room in Philadelphia after getting hit by a taxi. And it's my job, it's our job as a board to make sure that the doctor that comes to the bedside has met a high educational standard that assures the public that that person is qualified to care for her or him. And that's a very different responsibility than uh, lobbying for better reimbursement for a variety of services that our physicians render. That was a very important lesson for me, and I think uh, there was an individual that made me sensitive to it, and he was our first Washington representative, who I happened to meet as a very young faculty member at Southwestern when Dr. Clark, my chair, was president of our national organization, and he had just hired this man, Charlie Plant, to be our first attorney. We had lunch, and I remember something Charlie said that day. And it was, he was talking to Kemp Clark, my chair, and he said, Kemp, you don't understand. When Congress comes to me to weigh in on a matter, they're going to get my best educated opinion about that matter. Sometimes America's neurosurgeons are going to like it, and sometimes they won't. And uh, that really came together with that realization about being on a board. And now on the ACGME, that same responsibility for assuring that that same doctor has trained in an environment, a program, an institution that is capable of transmitting those board-driven educational requirements to the physicians in a positive and productive way to launch their practice life and their independent practice life. And that's, to me, the difference that people need to understand. And for those that are interested in pursuing service, to really understand the difference in those concepts. And both are important, but they are different. You don't go to Washington asking for money. You go to Washington asking for the capability of delivering better care to Americans. It's as simple as that. If you never lose that North Star, you're going to be all right. In a way, the NFL does fit into that kind of paradigm. When I got a call from Commissioner Goodell, my secretary texted me at Northwestern, and she said, and I just introduced a great friend of mine whose topic, he was our visiting professor, and he had a very unusual topic, and it was the role of neurosurgeons in professional athletics, which nobody ever talks about. Um, and I sat down, and my pager went off, and it was Commissioner Goodell from New York is on the phone. And so after the lecture, I called him back, and we got to talking, and he had just fired his mild traumatic brain injury committee, and they were recruiting, and he'd gotten my name as a potential chair, so I went to New York and uh, very much liked him. We had a great relationship and still do. But immediately, and what I saw in that first day of interviews on Park Avenue was the potential to through policies, uh, not just impact 2,000 professional athletes, but hundreds of millions of children worldwide that are playing world football, soccer, FIFA. They're playing other sports in other countries because of uh, the brand of the National Football League and the trickle down effect, not only to American and European schoolyards, but to sports everywhere. And that's how Rich Ellenbogen and I took that position on, and I'm becoming the poster child for an organization that, in my view, has had their head up their ass about this problem for quite a while. He said, "You're absolutely right, Doc. It's all about the players. Come join us. Whatever you need will be made available. So I think about the social contract. That's another part of it. If you have the chance, and all of our young physicians are going to be leaders in their institution, they're going to be leaders in their cities and towns. People are going to come to them. Hey, doc, you're a neurosurgeon. You're a orthopedic surgeon. Could you help us set the standards? We're trying to set up how we best manage our high schools medically. We're worried about, we've had way too many joints, we've had too many head injuries, we've had this, that, and the other. You're going to have opportunities as leaders in the community. Say yes to those. Embrace it. You may have to bone up on that particular topic. That'll take you an hour. Do it. Be a service to your public, and that will pay dividends in your practice as well. Your local reputation, you're going to be helping local children. Those children have parents. Those parents have employees. Those parents have employers. They're all connected. Do the right thing, and good things will happen.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Interview with the Surgeon. Until next time, stay focused and keep following your dreams.